Jai Ma. Good. Online, are we right side up?
Let's see.
Because sometimes the camera doesn't. One time it didn't switch a whole. I think Shivarachi was videotaped sideways. I don't know why it didn't switch, but
We're good.
we're good. I mean, I can talk this way if it helps, but I think Jai Ma. Jai Thakur. Om Mangalam Gurudevaya Devye Matriksha Mangalam Mangalam Bhakta Brindevyo Sarvalokaya Mangalam Om Stapakaya Chadharmasya Sarvadharma Sarupine Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya Mangalam Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankarachara Madhyamam Ashmarachara Prayandam Vande Gurum Parambaram Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Devo Param Brahman Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Guru Ganesha Sharabhyo Namaha Jai Ma. So we're picking up from our readings from Swami Vivekananda's Bhakti Yoga. One of the classic books is 4 small books on the 4 yogas. We're just coming to and I don't know if we'll finish tonight. We might. We never even finish a chapter with the speak of the book, but we have theoretically, I think, 3 chapters. So if I read really fast and don't talk, we may be able to finish, which is not my habit. So last week we read his very famous Triangle of Love. Anybody remember what the 3 parts of the triangle are? Love knows no bargaining. No fear. No rival. Yes. So, the problem now we see that almost all, not only our religion, but even our loving relationships is full of bargaining, fear, and rival. Interesting rivals and interesting. We didn't get to really speak too much about the rival. We spent more talking about other points of it. The rival is that there's when the one you love, there can be no second, right? That if you really love the ideal, not just small things that we love, attachment to, affection for, desire for. It's not what's meant. That there can be no second, right? And some have given. We can take scriptural statements from different traditions that can be very and judge them at their face value. Yeah, like love, like what is it? To have no other. Like there's one thing. Have no other gods before me. And then why I am a jealous God. Now we take that at the superficial level. What type of God is that? Jealous God, the lowest of human emotions. Right, and that may be the original meaning. We can only guess what was in God's mind or the writer's mind when he spoke or they wrote such things down. Right, but many modern theologians have unpacked it in a very open way. That no God before me means that that our love should go only to God, right? And it's an all or nothing type of thing. But Swamiji is not even saying that. It's not that we should, nothing else should take the place of God. When we love God, nothing can take the place of God. There's only when real love, pada bhakti develops, there can be nothing else, right? So it's not even you can't. That's another thing. That love knows no. Not that love shouldn't have a rival. Love has no rival. There's nothing beyond nothing. Nothing can take its place. So love's triangle. Swamiji, if we actually analyze this Bhakti Yoga, actually in Swamiji's works, very often he's speaking on texts that he's not quoting. Right? He gives a lecture, would be a class on the Ishopanishad. A lecture would be on the second part, the second verse of the second part of Yoga Sutra. But he never quotes, he never says those words. But you realize that, and now there's been some scholars within the Ramakrishna mission that have been annotating, right, that this verse, this idea, he's actually summarizing schools of thought and scriptures like that. So we can see that in his Bhakti Yoga, he's quoting many things from the famous Bhakti text, the Narada Bhakti Sutra, which Sri Ramakrishna said that in this age, especially, Naradiya Bhakti is the way, Bhakti as taught by Narada. And so this next chapter, called Love of God is its own proof. That's a direct, I sent it to you, I don't remember, I don't have the verses. We did a translation and we gave many talks on the Bhakti Sutra. What's the word for proof? You remember? There's a word. Prameya, what is it? Something. I'm embarrassed I had enough time to prepare for these things. Prepare? we had Amavasha yesterday. There's no time to do anything. But so that's a direct. This is in a certain sense a direct description of this. On this book, it's a page and a half. In the small book, it's about 3 small pages or 4 small pages. It's Swamiji's commentary on this verse. It's been interesting to go and insert the verses where Swamiji is talking. The other day we were looking at the Gyaneshwari Gita that the Siddha Yoga Ashram put out. That one version. It's such a beautiful version. Because if anybody knows Gyaneshwari Gita, it's a Marathi text by Gyaneshwara, very great saint. And the whole commentary is actually him re-speaking the Gita. So like it's just, oh Arjuna, don't you know this? Don't you know this? Don't you know this? Right? But actually, he's giving a commentary. All those verses are commentary on the Gita, but he doesn't quote the Gita. Right? He rephrases it in this form as commentary. And so what the Siddha Yoga Ashram did, they inserted the verse that he's commenting on, which is very helpful. And you realize, oh, that's his commentary on that verse. Extremely. Otherwise, it's kind of, I used to get kind of lost, and it's brilliant, but I never knew, what he was aiming at. So similarly, we could do that with Swamiji's books, is insert what part of the text he's describing. But anyway, when we spoke on the Narada Bhakti, we spent a lot of time on this idea of bhakti being its own evidence, its own proof. So we won't give the philosophical foundation so much. We'll let Swamiji speak and just try to explain his points. So this is God is love. The God of love is his own proof. What is the ideal of the lover who has quite passed beyond the idea of selfishness, of bartering and bargaining, and who knows no fear? So this is not a different talk. It's the next sentence from the last chapter. He talked about the three stages, the three legs of the triangle of love. So what can be said about such a person? What is it be? What is the ideal of such a lover who has passed beyond selfishness? That's a very big thing. Even to the great God, such a man will say, I will give you my all, and I do not want anything from you. Indeed, there is nothing that I can call my own. This is the symbol. This is the sentiment of bhakti, real bhakti. Oh God, whoever you are, as my intimate lover or the great, awesome God, to whom you can do anything. You have nothing to ask. I don't want anything. I just love you. Right? Don't ask anything. When a man has acquired this conviction, his ideal becomes one of perfect love, one of perfect fearlessness, born of love. Swami gave the example that, or describing that where love is, fear is not. Right. So this is fearlessness that can come from love. The highest ideal of such a person has no narrowness of particularity about it, for it is love universal, love without limits and bonds, love itself, absolute love. This grand idea of the religion of love is worshipped and loved absolutely as such, without the aid of any symbols or suggestions. Now, Swamiji is not criticizing temples. Sometimes it sounds like Swamiji can also very much easily criticize temples and images and beliefs and dogmas and ideas of God. But he's saying, in this book itself, he gave them all their proper importance as stages or as ways of thinking about things we can't think about. But he's at a level, this level of bhakti we here call pada bhakti. This is beyond. Pada means beyond, right? So we think of our definition of bhakti or love. It's not that. Pada means it's not that. So any definition we come, it's not that. So we can say, oh, I love God. What do you mean by God? Oh, God's my mother. It's not that. That's not what we're talking about. Or God's my father. Even the next chapter we'll talk about these very sweet relationships with God, right? But pada bhakti is beyond even any concept. Any. Not that a lover of God won't go to a temple, right? But the one Ma's not just here. Of course, we start God's not just here. God's everywhere. Right, and sometimes we foolishly say, "Oh, since God's everywhere, I won't go to a temple." Right, and that's complete foolishness. It means because God's everywhere, we won't see Him anywhere or see her anywhere. That's foolishness. But when you actually see Him everywhere, or see her everywhere, when that's your actual experience, not a belief or a conviction, but an actual experience, then when you're in a temple, wonderful. When you're not in a temple, wonderful. Right, you can't forget. You cannot not think. This great ideal of the religion of love is worshipped and loved absolutely as such, without the aid of any symbol or suggestions. This is the highest form of para bhakti, the worship of such an all-comprehending ideal as the ideal. All the other forms of bhakti are only stages on the way to reach it. All our failures and all our successes in following the religion of love are on the road to the realization of this one ideal, para bhakti. Object after object is taken up, and the inner ideal is successively projected on them, all. And all such external objects are found inadequate as expressions of the ever-expanding inner ideal, and are naturally rejected one after another. So we take one object after another, not just like an object like a statue or a symbol, but an object of a mental idea or some idea of God, and we take object after object and we present and we project on it the infinite ideal that we're of God, and try to love it. But in each one of them, that ideal will never. That's also we can put. Obviously, we're not going to stand here in front of Mons and talk against idol worship and deity worship, right? Right. But the Bible says, "Create no graven image." So it's again a very liberal, trained interpretation of even these verses. Is this idea is that whatever any image, any idea, not just physical image, any mental image, any cultural image, any intellectual image, emotional image, and we project the infinite qualities on it and try to worship it. But at a certain stage, we realize it's lacking. It doesn't fit, right? I don't want to jump. There's a beautiful on the next page. One of my favorite lines is on Vivekananda, and actually, in a certain sense, the infinite is trying. Not only are we trying to put our love for the infinite into a limited object, right, and therefore we'll find that never fully satisfying. As we progress, we will find that, and one after another, we'll replace it with some larger and more sublime, more subtle, and more sublime, until the images, not images, but the mental images and mental constructions fall away, are transcended one after another, right? But maybe even creation itself is the infinite self trying to manifest in imperfect, limited forms. It's not only us trying to find it in the limited forms, but limited forms are itself the revelations of that. Somebody will say something like that momentarily. At last, the aspirant begins to think that it is vain to try to realize the ideal in external objects, that all external objects are nothing when compared to the ideal itself, And in the course of time, he acquires the power of realizing the highest and most generalized abstract ideal, entirely as an abstraction that is to him quite alive and real. When the devotee has reached this point, he is no longer impelled to ask whether God can be demonstrated or not, whether he is omnipotent and omniscient or not. To him, he is only the God of love. He is the highest ideal of love, and that is sufficient for all his purposes. When the devotee reaches this point, he does not have to, the question whether that God can be proved, or not is irrelevant. Actually, in Swami's his commentary on the Raja Yoga section, I forget what verse one of the early verses he's commenting on. He also states that the idea that maybe some people, I know you have a degree in religion. Unfortunately, I also have a degree in religion. Right, and so which we spent a lot of time arguing for the arguments for and against God's existence. We have the argument from, you have the argument of design. So many arguments that are put. Like if the world shows design, there has to be a designer. There has to be a prime mover, a first cause, an uncaused first cause. There's all these. I have to admit I like this stuff. So I studied these things. It's kind of fascinating, but it's just out of mental hobby. You got to do something, and this is didn't require math. Also, that was another benefit of studying this in school. But Swami Vivekananda says actually so many people, not only intellectually but in religion also, they're arguing for, trying to prove God's existence, trying to convince people of God's existence, trying to convince themselves of God's existence. Now it's entered the political sphere and what you put in textbooks and what teachers can teach and not teach, trying to force what you teach to controversy and all the different things that have come up, trying to establish this. But Swami Vivekananda says actually, but to an actual knower of Brahman, to a knower of God, that they never try to give all these arguments for God's existence. When you ask, well, how do you know God? Well, does God exist? Of course He exists. But how do you know He exists? I know. No. What's the? Can you give example? It's gotten to a point we were discussing the other day that really in modern. Forgive me. It's been 20 years since I've really engaged these philosophical arguments, right? But I tell you right now, it comes down to a little tiny propeller on a one-celled creature, right? that proves God exists. That's because it's come down to this, right? Maybe you've seen there's a tiny little microorganism that's tail has a little propeller tail. That the argument is that in the amount of time that biological life has existed, it's impossible for that to have evolved on its own. This is the arguments, right? So the argument, really at present, right, all religion and science and religion is on a little propeller of a little one cell, but this is, to use this to argue with Sri Ramakrishna would be quite silly, right? Right. But no, God's not the creator. Because look at this little propeller on a one-cell organism. It's like that's it's actually very interesting. It puts to question the whole view of evolutionary theory and the timeline of evolutionary theory. So it's a fascinating discussion, right? But the sides that put a lot of value into this one argument. I think it's interesting that religion, science and religion, is based upon this one little bit of evidence, argument. But no yogi or no we consider realized people, they don't speak like this, right? They speak from their own experiences, and they can't argue the experience. Sri Ramakrishna gave an example. He says that using his wonderful style of talking, he says that a little girl goes to his older sister, and says, "What's marriage relationships like between you and your husband?" Right? He says, and she says, I cannot explain it to you. When you're older, when you get married, you'll know. That's Ramakrishna's way of describing religion. In the beginning, how can you, at a proper age, that experience is not possible. Not appropriate also, and not possible also. Right? When you're older, arrangements will be made, and you'll also know what the experience is like. So this is what the yogis with it, that your own eventually when you have your own experience, then you'll know. Sometimes out of compassion, such people who have this knowledge will try to share it with you. Oh, it's so wonderful, right? But that's almost all they can say about it. It's very wonderful, encouraging you, right? And so it's a knowledge not based. So love. So in the Bhakti Sutra, love of God itself is described as its own proof. Here it says the God of love is his own proof. It's just saying it in a different way, right? Let's continue here. Let's see. He as love is self-evident and requires no proof to demonstrate the existence of the beloved to the lover. We sometimes quote, there's a Bob Marley song. You have to quote the Bible and Bob Marley, always at the same time. Right. It's that he who knows it, he who feels it knows it, Lord, I think is the line. Right. The same thing is that the knowledge of God comes from its own realization. And but it's interesting because the argument for and against God's existence, if you talk to a bhakti yogi who's claiming, yes, I know God, right? What do they know? What's the evidence of that? All they can prove is that their experience of love of God, right? Their experience of God is not proof that that being exists externally. It's proof that their love of God is its proof, right? The experience is the proof, not an object. And that's a problem, is that we try to make God a provable object, right? But Vedanta and all the systems, they say, what's the characteristics of God or the qualities of God? They call it Satchitananda, right? Sat means existence, not something that exists. It's existence. This microphone exists, maybe. It's even hard to prove the microphone. It's hard to prove the microphone exists, right? But existence, you can't. It's not a thing to exist, right? And the claim of those who claim to know the thing itself, or the existence itself, say that the only way to know it is to know it. That's also the second part, the chit part. Knowing it is, and then knowing its existence is the third part, ananda. Wonderful. He as love is self-evident, it requires no proofs to demonstrate the existence of the beloved to the lover. The magistrate gods of other forms of religion may require a good deal of proofs to prove them. I like that, the magistrate gods. The magistrate gods of other forms of religion may require a good deal of proofs to prove them, but the Bhakta does not and cannot think of such gods at all. To him, God exists entirely as love. None of, and then he quotes from the Briharanyaka Upanishad, none, O beloved, loves the husband for the husband's sake. If I get the right verse, it's the right chapter. It's for the sake of the self, who is in the husband, that the husband is loved. None, O beloved, loves the wife for the wife's sake, the sake for the self, that the wife, who is in the wife, that the wife is loved. It's the one we're loving. It is said by some that selfishness is the only motive power behind all human activities. That's actually the other option, right? And that's the most common, that's the modern view, right? Both psychologically, economically, right? Biologically, that the life runs upon selfishness, and then we've arranged ourselves in societies that we can mutually benefit from our personal selfishness, and therefore better society. And there's something, we could see that it's potentially, and maybe in certain situations may kind of work, but doesn't really work. But this is not the, it's not a very nice worldview. This is not the lover's worldview. It is said by some that selfishness is the only motive power behind all human activities. But Swamiji says, even that view, that actually everything we do is only for our own benefit, is only we're all selfish beings trying to get pleasure and happiness, security, and to propagate, right? But even that, Swamiji does not. Swamiji is so liberal. He even sees that also as love, right? So he says, that also is love, though it has been lowered by being particularized. When I think of myself as comprehending the universal, there can surely be no selfishness in me. But when, by mistake, I think that I am something little, my love becomes particularized and narrowed. The mistake consists in making the sphere of love narrow and contracted. All things in the universe are of divine origin and deserve to be loved. It has to be borne in mind, however, that the love of the whole includes the love of the parts. When we love the parts, we're really trying to love. This is a chapter we read a couple weeks ago on the particular and the samasti, and the universal. We're looking for the universal even in the particular, right? And so when we love the particular, it's hard to talk. I mean, it's kind of abstract language, but I'm just reading with somebody. This is a chapter we're on. When we're trying to love the particular, we're really loving the universal. We're searching for the universal, right? But when we love the universal, the particular is included, right? Like if we see a leaf of a plant, of a tree, right? Go, oh, it's so beautiful. Really, by loving a flower or a leaf of a tree, we're loving the tree, right? But if we love the tree, all the flowers, branches, leaves, everything is included. And there's a problem, like if this is a classic example that Vaishnava sadhus have given of that of watering. If you want to water a tree, like, oh, I love this flower on the tree, let me pour water on it. Let me give it food, fertilizer on it. Right? It doesn't benefit. Right? It's not that. But if you water the tree, the leaves also benefit. You water the roots, the leaves will benefit. So by worshiping the universe, by loving the universal, all the particulars are worship. By loving the particulars, that's also good, but what are you really loving in particular? You're loving the universal, just in a small, particularized way. The whole is the God, this whole is the God of the bhaktas. And all the other gods, this is beautiful, all the other gods, fathers in heaven, rulers or creators, all the theories and doctrines and books have no purpose and no meaning for them. Seeing that they have, through their supreme love and devotion, risen above those things altogether. Not just books and doctrines, but even all the gods of fathers and rulers of heaven. These are all the different conceptions of God. Right? Even these are left behind. Okay. When the heart is purified and cleansed and filled to the brim with the divine nectar of love, all the other ideas of God become simply puerile and are rejected as being inadequate and unworthy. Such is indeed the power of para bhakti, or supreme love. The perfected bhakta no longer goes to see God in temples and churches. He knows no place where he will not find him. So actually, you should all make your donations before you get to this stage. Because then you'll, this is a problem. This is actually, some people accuse, the reason this is not taught, because then churches will lose their membership dues. Right? There's a funny story I'm just remembering. It's in the larger tradition of the Bhagavatam. I don't think it's actually in the Bhagavatam verses itself. It may be in the Bhagavad Mahatmyam perhaps. But our Guruji Swami Bhajanananda, he tells a story. He says that when Vyasa was going to be looking for somebody to speak the Bhagavatam to, who's the qualified person to teach the supreme science of bhakti? He said, well, the only person I know is the one boy who's untouched by Maya, his own son, Sukadev, right? But people, not making a comment on modern political situation, but if you just give it to your son or to a family member, what's his qualification? You'll be accused of, what is it called, nepotism, right? Right. So he said but he's the only qualified person in this. But everybody's going to accuse, you're teaching it only to your son, right? He's not qualified. So he said, I better send my son to a qualified teacher to get credentials. So he sent him to King Janak. Right. So already, because Sukadev is a naked Paramahansa, so like supreme like that. And so it took great humility. He had to go and become a disciple of a king, of a householder, right? So if he learns from him the Vedas, Puranas, like this, and then the Bhagavatam, then he can be shown to have the qualification to therefore learn the Bhagavatam and therefore teach the Bhagavatam. This is how we get the Bhagavatam. So, but the verse that I'm remembering is King Janaka says, the tradition is after you learn this knowledge, then you give the Guru Dakshina. You give the dues to the Guru and you go. But I want my Guru Dakshina first, right, before you start. Because this is unusual. It's the scriptures state, it describes you first you go at the end of the teaching, the Guru gives you blessings to live in this world, and you give your Dakshina and you leave, right? He said, no. The problem when I teach you, right? I'll teach you this Pada Bhakti, this Pada Brahman, this highest knowledge, the higher knowledge, right? You'll see no distinction anywhere, right? Even he says, even between me and you, you'll see no distinction, right? And you won't think to pay my dues. So first pay, and then I'll teach you that which is beyond Guru and disciple. So just a little bit. Sorry, it just came in my mind. When the heart is purified and cleansed and filled to the brim with the divine nectar of love, all other ideas of God simply become puerile and are rejected as being inadequate and unworthy. Such indeed is the power of Pada Bhakti, or supreme love. The perfected Bhakta no longer goes to a church, goes to see God in temples or churches. He knows no place where he will not find him. He finds him outside the temple as well as in the temple. He finds him in the wicked man's wickedness as well as the saint's saintliness. Because he sees him already seated in glory in his own heart, as the one Almighty, inextinguishable light of love, which is ever shining and eternally present. This is described here as but this is what's known as Paramgati. This is the ultimate goal. That idea that we can. Not only could we see God, we try to see God in a holy place. Can we see God in an unholy place? Actually, no, because unholy places don't exist. Right? That's the thing that we go into it. The problem we think, I'm going to practice some radical tantric form and try to see God in unclean things, and like this is not at this stage. There's no clean, there's no unclean. There's no pure, there's no impure. There's no good, there's no bad. We have to see God in the good and see God in the bad. That's our practice. Taking this an ideal, how do we see it? Okay, this is not the same thing. When you see, we quoted last week from Rabia when he was asked, "Do you love God?" Yes. Do you hate the devil? No. Right? Because what do you mean you don't hate the devil? It's in the scriptures. You have to fight the devil. He says, God has removed all hatred. I only see God. I don't hate anybody. Right? This is the idea that there's no devil anymore. We'll continue. The chapter now is Human Representations of Divine Love. It is impossible to express the nature of the supreme and absolute ideal of love in human language. Even the highest flight of human imagination is incapable of comprehending it in all its infinite perfection and beauty. The highest flight of human imagination is incapable of comprehending it, its infinite perfection and beauty. It is impossible to express the nature of the supreme and absolute ideal of love in human language. Actually, Thakur said many times, he says that we have this idea, when something touches your mouth, it becomes unclean, right? Not so much in the West, but in the sense that you can't, once you touch, once you touch your mouth, you can't touch food. Nobody else will touch that food. It becomes unclean because uchista, right? Means it's unclean. Right? He says, Swami Bhajanananda said, actually, God is the only thing that's never become jut or uchista. God has never touched anybody's lips. Right? The highest expressions and realizations and experiences and emotions of love has never been polluted. He says being spoken means become polluted. It can't be spoken. Right? We speak so many things, but we never actually speak that. Right? And then there's a beautiful, little bit related, passage by Swami Vivekananda, where he's talking about his own guru, about Sri Ramakrishna. And he says, it's like I feel disgusted with myself that I read books. Right? I'm eating dirty leftover from other people's plates. Right? My guru never did that. Right? And it's like he had direct experience. He didn't touch anybody. He didn't depend on other books and other people's words. These are unpure. But also, they're not only the other people's. They're unclean because they've already been sold to be spoken in human language. They're already being lowered tremendously. Right. We thank God that some of the saints have spoken something, but even Sri Ramakrishna is saying that even his divine words are not really he can never put expressions to them. Right. Even the highest fly of the human imagination is incapable of comprehending it in all its infinite perfection and beauty. Nevertheless, the followers of the religion of love, in its higher and lower forms in all countries, have all along had to use an adequate human language in all its varied forms, and had to make it typify this inexpressible divine love. Thank God the saints of all religions, of this religion of love, the true religion of love, they've used, although impossible to speak in human language, they've used human language. And by using human language, they also use examples like actually somebody will describe the different bhavas. It's like, God, our relation with God is like a child to its mother, or a father to its child, or between lovers. Right, you read, you look at the gopis of Raj, that it's spoken in the language of romance. It's not exactly that. It's not that at all, actually. But there's nothing. That's the only thing that comes. That's the only language that comes close. So they use this language. They use like this. Nay, human love itself, in all its varied forms, has been made to typify this inexpressible divine love. Man can think of divine things only in his own human way. To us the absolute can be expressed only in our relative language. And this is one of, if you're always looking for our favorite Swami Bhajanananda line, this is one of them. The whole universe is to us the writing of the infinite in the language of the finite. That's a great line. The infinite expressing itself in the language of the finite, that's the universe. So we use the language of the finite to describe the infinite, naturally. I love this line. I'll repeat. Man can think of divine things only in his own human way. To us, the absolute can be expressed only in our relative language. The whole universe is to us a writing of the infinite in the language of the finite. Therefore, bhaktas make use, in relation to God and his worship through love, of all the common terms associated with the common love of humanity. Some of the great writers on Pada Bhakti have tried to understand and experience this divine love in a number of different ways. So now Swamiji is going to describe what's called the Panchabhavas. These are the five, in the Vaishnava tradition especially, they describe these are five primary relationships we have with God. And there's great examples of these relationships. And some people have only primarily one relationship. This is their relationship with God. But no relationship, like I have a relationship with one of you, but it's not just that. Right? So our relationship, it's always makes our relationship with God even more mixed. These are extremely limited ways of speaking, but they work. The lowest form, and also the idea of lower and higher, they are stratified. But if one in one of these bhavas, of these sentiments, realizes God, it's not lower or higher. It's But you'll see what is meant by lower and higher here. But the lowest form in which this love is appreciated is that which is called peaceful, or shanta bhava. When a man worships God without the fire of love in him, without its madness in his brain, when his love is just the calm, commonplace love, a little higher than mere forms and ceremonies and symbols, but not at all characterized by the madness of intensely active love, it is said to be shanta, peaceful. So it's interesting. So, and last sentence here. We see some people in the world who like to move on slowly, and others who come and go like the whirlwind. The Shanta Bhav is calm, peaceful, and gentle. So sometimes the example that's given of Shantabhav is like the rishis, right? Living in the forest, right? And in gentle, calm contemplation of the absolute, right? Beholding with their mind flowing towards God, but in just this in a peaceful way, not a turbulent way, right? Right, emotionally mature way, right? A calm, gentle, right? Right. So, but if somebody tells you, "I hope your life is calm and gentle, you never have any passionate longing and stirring and conflict in your heart," that's a curse, not a blessing, right? But sometimes it's still great, but but it's not. You can see, but some people that's their nature. That's they're not, and actually, and all this drama, it's like the people, people go, they go to church, they pray, they think of God, they feel a great satisfaction in the faith of their religion, and nourishment from their tradition. And then somebody else with the same religion in the church down the street, where they're shouting and speaking in tongues and picking up serpents. That's incredible. Like, it's not Shantabhav. It's its own bhav. I don't know exactly, but it's a Shantabhav, not Shantabhav. Right. The next type. So the next higher type is that of Dasya Bhava. It comes when a man thinks that he is a servant of the Lord. The attainment of the faithful servant to the master is his ideal, the servant of God. So the one that's given, "Oh Lord, you are the master, I am your servant. I simply want to serve." Right? So who's the famous example of Dasya Bhava, or a famous example? Hanuman. Hanuman's always given as a great example of Dasya Bhava. Hanuman had all the bhavs mixed up for sure, right? But he's the das of Ram. He's only a servant, only wants to do Ram's will, right? And therefore he completely forgets himself, only wants to do Ram's will. Not serving God so he can get something. He cannot help but serve God exuberantly, right? Actually, you see, this is the Dasya Bhav can correct a major mistake, right? Or manartha, some knot in the heart. Our knot in the heart is the ego wants to be served. We want to be in the center. We want to be in control. We think we're in control. We think everybody should serve us and do what we want and love us and adore us. Should be popular, lots of likes, shares. Like, I'm pretty sure 1,000 people will watch this video before I'm finished. Hopefully, we want everybody to, so this is the idea of wanting to be in the center. But even that has the real, because the self is the center of everything, but not the way we think, right? It's polluted right now. Right, and so Dasya Bhav changes it. Not, what is it? Not I, but thou. What did Thakur say? Naham, to whom. Right, not I, but thou. Right? Then Thakur gives a very strange story about a cow. We won't go over the beating of the cow and the leather. It's the whole thing where a cow starts saying I, and eventually it's through many levels of suffering. Eventually, I won't go through the graphic details in front of Ma, our sacred cows, right? It becomes leather. Its leather becomes a drum, and the drum gets being used at the temple, going to whom, and its suffering ends. Thakur is I'm not telling the full story. It's an elaborate story, right? But how it goes from we say I, we suffer. Eventually, we say you, then suffering ends, right? So that's a major. It's very useful because it's also true, right? We're not the center. We want to be the center, but we're not really the center. Our center is the center. That's the problem. So even that is based upon reality, but the I and the ego are not. The real I and the ego are not always the same thing. The ego wants to be worshipped. So Dasya, and so Sri Ramakrishna also went through this Dasya stage, or not stage. He went through the sadhana of the Dasya Bhava. It says that under one of his gurus, we don't always think of him as one. We always think of the guru as Totapurti or Tantric guru, but one of his guru was Jatadhari. He was a Vaishnava Baba, Vairagi. The big Jatadhari means big Jata. I would point to mine, but something, I don't know what happened. I woke up one morning, disappeared. But So Jatadhari was a worshipper of Ram, and so during his sadhana, inspired by Jatadhari, he had a couple different Babas. Another one's coming, Vatsalya Baba. He had baby Ram that he worshipped, but he also went to a stage where he was worshipping like Hanuman. He wasn't worshipping Hanuman. He was Hanuman, right? His mood was Hanuman. He became Hanuman, or like Hanuman, so much so that he would jump. He would sleep in trees and jump around and make noises. He grew a tail, even, it says, right? That his tailbone extended for a short period of time, right? That he'd eat fruit that wasn't cut. He'd look the way monkeys ate. So it's a strange, we don't really think, but Sri Ramakrishna was not the classic example of Shanta Baba. He had every hurricane of divine emotion entered his body and mind. So much so that he said that if you experience 1/10 of what I've experienced, you die. Our nervous system can't handle, right? So he also went through this Dasya Baba, and even toward the Divine Mother, he entered this stage, that of a maidservant, right? Shaki and maidservant is a mixture between servant and friend. That's another one of the. So these Babas are all mixed, right? But he was also the female attendant. Yeah, he even dressed in female clothing like this and behaved this way, trying to become Ma's attendant. Because the Divine Mother, of course, we can all go visit the Queen. We go into her, we get dressed properly, we get introduced properly, brought into her presence, make our petition, find out she stamps our approved or not approved, and then sends us on our way. That's how you approach a queen, right? To have intimate relationships with her, you can be her child, but we're not her child. I mean, in the regular queen. So, but the most we can think, if I can become a servant, if I can be in her court, I can be not just a person bringing people in and out and what if I can help her get dressed in the morning, right? And put on her makeup, right? This is also a type of Dasya Bhav, right? It's a very intimate relationship with the Queen of the Universe. That's not the Queen of the Universe. She's not a friend. She's the master or the mistress. But there's so much intimacy even in that relationship, Dasya Bhava. The next type of love is Sakya. Sakya means friendship. Thou art our beloved friend. Just as a man opens his heart to his friend and knows that the friend will never chide him for his faults, but will always try to help him, just as there is the idea of equality between him and his friends, so equal love flows in and out between the worshipper and his friendly God. Thus God becomes our friend, the friend who is near, the friend to whom we may freely tell all our tales of our lives, before whom we may place our innermost secrets of our hearts, with the greatest assurance of safety and support. He is the friend whom the devotee accepts as an equal. God is viewed here as our playmate. So this is interesting. God's our friend, our loving friend. We think like that. But what does it really mean to have this real relationship? A friend. In Krishna Lila, there's stories where Krishna is he goes out with his friends. 8-9 years. This is a Lila. They're around 8-9 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, and they take the cows out and they go with the picnic, and the appropriate sports at that time. One of the sports is you play hide and seek. Another one is you wrestle, right? And so they're wrestling. So who are they wrestling with? They're wrestling with Krishna tu Bhagavan Swayam. He's directly God himself, the infinite Godhead himself, right? But they're wrestling with him, right? And so do they know he's God? Maybe they know he's God. We know, if we read the story and know he's God, they probably knew something too. They were in the story, right? But in some stories, some versions say they pin him down in the wrestling and they win. And they even pin him down and says, they think you're God. Get out of this one. And he can't. Right, because love is the most important part of God is love, and here the relationship not all powerful. It's best friend is the most important part, and best friend is way higher than all powerful, right? Sri Ramakrishna said that the more intense your love, the idea of God being all powerful goes down. We've said this many times, but Thakur said that in the beginning you think of God as like Durga with 10 arms, each arm representing some divine power, majesty, power. Creation, punishment, all these tremendous powers as the ruler of the universe, right? But then as your love and intimacy grow, then it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, become friend, Then eventually will be the next one coming. I'm going to give you a hint. Become baby Krishna, he says. Baby Krishna is a different thing altogether. Where is the power in baby Krishna? Right? Even not only us as adults, we can definitely control him. even his friends, like sometimes he wins, sometimes they win. That's the way it works, right? So it's very. So is it true? I mean, one thing we're just thinking. We're thinking we're superimposing our human relationships and talk. In a certain sense, we're superimposing our relationship on the infinite, right? Or the infinite is our friend. This is more true than the idea that he's all powerful and we're his infinitesimal sparks meant to have some service or relationship like this. This is actually closer to the reality of love. If love is the reality of God, this is a higher form of love, right? Where it's not based upon. Once again, love knows no fear, love knows no bargaining, love knows no equal. In dasya, there could be fear, punishment from them. You can serve somebody out of fear, out of recognizing they're very powerful. There's a famous, great sermon, or theological sermon in a Mighty Python movie, right? So and the sermon goes, "Oh God," I'm not getting it perfectly. Last week I talked about the sermon. What is it? Sinners in the hands of an angry God. This, and I'll do a new sermon. It says, "Oh God, gosh, you're huge." It's a great line. We're mighty impressed down here. It's like, it's obviously a parody, right? But it's a parody because the reason it's funny. I was on the floor cracking up when I came to Mighty Python movies late. I have to admit, some people here had a higher birth. It's funny because that's so much of religion is couched like that. Gosh, you're huge. We're mighty impressed down here, right? That's religion, but it's true. God's huge and really impressive, right? That's a good first realization that there's something huge, and in comparison, we're really tiny and wow, right? And maybe a little scary. Maybe we got to deal with it properly, right? But as love increases and more intimacy and fear goes down, affection increases, then like our friends. I remember one Swami told me, he's like, a friend is somebody you can inconvenience. That's like, if you can come to their house without calling, knowing you're an inconvenience. That's like, it's like knew we would never do that. Oh no, we should have to call, make sure they're okay. But actually that's what is it? One Swami maybe Ishtananda, when he first came from India. He's Ramakrishna Mission Swamiji. I think he's now in Florida, perhaps, running the Florida Center. But I remember when he first came, we asked him, Swamiji, how do you find America? Do you find it different? Of course, America is a little different than India, right? And he says, no. So he said, the point I find in America is different, is that here we ask permission before visiting someplace, but we can leave whenever we want. And in India, you can come whenever you want, but you have to have permission to leave, right? That's it's totally true. Without permission, you can't leave somebody's house. You can go anytime, and actually, the more inconvenient you are, the more affection you have for them. That means that you have that relationship with them, right? I've been in many situations where the way I showed love and showed affection to them is to come when I'm not. I've shown up as like, oh, you've come. like great. Right? And immediately like, what can I get you? And then you ask for something that they don't have. They have to go out and get it. That actually shows affection, right? A level of relationship. We think we can't do that to God, right? But some of the great saints did that to God, right? This is a higher form, higher than in Swami Vivekananda's stratification. He's saying this is even higher than that of Dasya. We may well say that we are all playing in this universe, just as children play their games, just as the most glorious kings and emperors play their own games. So is the beloved Lord himself playing in this universe. He is perfect. He does not want anything. Why should he create? Activities with us is always for the fulfillment of a certain want, and want always presupposes imperfection. God is perfect. He has no wants. Why should he go on with this incessant work of creation? This is a big challenge in classical Advaita Vedanta. Like, okay, what about this creation? There is no creation. How could there be? Well, obviously the creation. No, there's no creation. There can't be creation because creation. Why would Brahman create? Right? Because you do something because there's a lack, and therefore you create. You do something only because you find a lack, and there can be no lack in Brahman. You do it because you want to. There can be no desire in Brahman, right? Therefore, there's no creation. There, solved. Everybody can go. We can stop right here, right? Yet we find a creation. So in Kashmir Shaivism, they gave a slightly different, to the same point. They answered in the debates between Vedanta and Shaivism, which is also a non-dualistic school, but it's a tantric school of non-dualism. It says no, actually, this is the desire to act or the impetus to act is not a fault, right? A child doesn't play because sometimes we act very often because out of selfish desire, out of need or boredom or lack, hunger. Whatever it is, desire, right? But a child, he plays because he plays. It's his nature. It's intrinsic, right? And so they call that Shakti Swatantriya. Swatantriya means, now in common language, Swatantriya means free will. That's how Swatantriya has been kind of modernly used, even in, don't take away its free will, we use the word Swatantriya. But Swatantriya is considered the primary Shakti within that's primary. And from that, he just, out of his own nature, spontaneous nature, not out of lack of something, right? So the only thing we have an example of that is playfulness. Even that may just be a human projection on something. There's no other way to explain it, because in our relationships, in our experiences, it seems that that's the closest we get to a child playing or a bird singing, right? Maybe we know it's doing that in order to attract a mate. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just out of the joy of singing. Who knows? Maybe it's just pleasure. There's no lack. It's just, and so this Swatantriya Shakti is said that's the primary Shakti. That's what they call spanda, the first vibration within consciousness is Swatantriya Shakti, right? Desire to, in the Vedas it says, I am one, let me become many, right? It's not I am one and lonely, right? I need people to worship me and offer me coconuts at Kali Mandir. Right. Therefore, let me create everything. It's not. I am one. It's just its own nature. Its own part of being one is being many. Right. That's the Ananda factor. Right. Sat and Chat and Ananda requires. And Ananda is experiential. It needs something to experience. That's intrinsic to Sat and Chit. Within the one, there has to be many. There has to be creation. And we describe it as play. My Guruji had a small book. What is life? Right, and he had 108. He used many other definitions, but Swami Paramananda edited down to 108. He chose the best 108. It's an auspicious number, and he gives all kinds of definitions. Life is this. Life is a search for the absolute. Life, but the one he liked, I think it starts. Life is a play. That was his favorite, right? But if you push him on it, it's like, is life really a play? It's like life is none of these things. Life is inconceivable. One of the definitions, life is inconceivable. It's one of the definitions. Life is undefinable. Can't be known. Right, but we think this is the closest we can get to it. This is not only closest, it's sublime. It's so refined if we think about it, so joyful. Life is a play. Why should he go on with his incessant work of creation? What purpose could he have in view? The story of God's creating the world for some end or other that we imagine are good as stories, but not otherwise. It is all really sport. The universe is merely his play. The whole universe must, after all, be a big piece of pleasing fun to him. So this whole thing must be, otherwise why do it? It must be fun. That's why he's doing it. If you are poor, so this is tricky, because then we have to be a little careful, because we can't use this. It's like what are people suffering? Oh, it's God's play. Right? What about the Holocaust? Oh, God's play. Let it go. It's like, also the play is also being really upset about the Holocaust and try to end people's suffering. That's also his play, right? This is play here means his expression. He's playing all the parts, right? And in the parts, in the story, there's some people, in any good story, there's bad guys, there's good guys, there's victims, and there's victors, and and the whole thing, right? The problem is when we find ourselves in the suffering role, right? It's hard to enjoy the suffering role, right? But so we have to be tricky not to use this to justify people suffering like this, but so it's talking about the way, the view of the type of bhakta, the highest bhakta would see it like this: if you are poor, enjoy being poor as fun. If you are rich, enjoy the fun of being rich. If dangers come, it is all good. It is also good fun. If happiness come, there is more good fun. The world is just a playground, and we are all having good fun, having a game. And God is playing with us all the while, and we are playing with Him. God is our eternal playmate. How beautiful He is playing. The play is finished when the cycle comes to an end. At Mahapralaya. There is rest for a short or longer time. Again, all comes out. There is rest for a shorter or longer time. Again, all comes out and play. This is the creation and destruction of the universe, is all this play. Right? What is it? Swamiji, you sometimes quote Turiyananda, that scene with Swami Turiyananda, where Thakur sang or something about a song about this whole world is just a play of the Divine Mother. Didn't he say something like, yeah, but her play is our death? Something like this. There's a line, he's like, it may be God's play, but I mean, for us it's like death. Like it's not fun. It's not always fun. And then Swami asks, but who are you? Right? So we can only imagine what the answer to that question, but who are you playing this? Who is the you that's suffering? Right? That's a bigger question. It is only when you forget that it is all a play that you are also helping in the play. It is only then that misery and sorrows come, that the heart becomes heavy and the world weighs upon you with tremendous power. But as soon as you give up your serious belief in the reality of the changing incident of the 3 minutes of life, and know it to be but a stage on which you are playing, helping Him to play, at once misery ceases for you. He plays in every atom. He is playing when He is building up earths and suns and moons. He is playing with the human heart, with animals, with plants. We are His chessmen. He puts the chessmen on the board and shakes them up. He arranges us first in one way and then in another, and we consciously or unconsciously help in His play. And oh bliss, we are His playmates. Quite a idea. Actually, Sri Ramakrishna, in some places, this is a esoteric topics that Sri Ramakrishna talked about. He says actually Sri Ramakrishna's words for this world, right, the relative world, the mundane world or the seemingly mundane world, he called it the lila, right? And lila means play, and usually lila means like the Divi Lila, like Krishna playing with the gopis or in the heavenly realms like this. But actually, this world also he called the lila, and we know that because when in the Katamrita, the first time it's used lila, parentheses in English, it says what is it? Phenomenal world. He not only translates what lila means in Bengali, he puts it in English. Lila equals phenomenal world, and he says, and then there's the nitya. This is the absolute, right? So the eternal or the absolute. So that's that simple thing. So you have the absolute and then the phenomenal world. But even though that language for the phenomenal, the absolute, the nitya, the eternal, beyond time, and the play within time, and the play within time. The language itself for the relative is play, right? And then we have the idea of the nitya lila. Nitya lila is and usually we treat nitya lila as so the nitya is the eternal, and the lila is the relative. The nitya lila is the play of the eternal, right, or the eternal play. So usually when we think, oh, somebody has entered nitya lila, meaning that when a saint has died, they've gone to the one they meditate, and they're meditating on Krishna and Radha and Krishna, they've gone to the realm of Radha. They've entered the nitya lila. That in the eternal world, the play goes on continuously. Right, the Lord's always singing and dancing with His best friends in the absolute world, right? not in. But sometimes, so that's one way of using the Nitya Lila, that the eternal play is going on. But the Nitya Lila is also Chakra uses it as a realization in this world that the difference between the Lila, the relative manifestation, and the absolute we have to understand. But then at a stage of subtlety, we see that this world is the play of the absolute, right? Or what did the Swami, a very nice the whole universe is to us writing of the infinite in the language of the finite. The same idea, right? The infinite in the finite. That's called Nitya Lila. This is the Nitya Lila, right? And you can say, is it? But this world, Nitya means eternal. Kind of means eternal, right? Nitya means eternal. What does eternal mean? Eternal means everlasting, going on a long time. Eternal means all the time being done, right? Eternal also means beyond time. So that's all three meanings have to be understood by Nitya Lila. And what does it mean by eternal? So just the other day, do I have time for this or not? We're studying in the Gita. This world is described as an upside down ashwata tree, a banyan tree, right? And so I described, and it just gives a description. But it's interesting. And then it said, but this tree has to be cut down. This tree, what its root, it said its roots are up above, and its branches and leaves down below. So that's so strange. So it's a symbolic tree, right? And its roots, above means in Brahman. Its taproot is in Brahman. This whole thing, it means this whole root, that's tree of the phenomenal world, of the world of Maya, of samsara, the samsara tree, which Krishna says with the sharp axe of discrimination, cut down, or detachment, cut down, right? But its roots in Brahman, right? So it's like it's coming. It's the manifestation of Brahman. That's the version of the Gita. But then it's interesting. Shankaracharya gives an interesting gloss of a term in it. This term for banyan tree is ashwata, right? You have banyan trees. Only person here who has banyan trees is Gita. She grows banyan trees. Ashwata, I think, right? And so it says this ashwata is described as eternal. Krishna says the ashwata tree. This world is described as an ashwata tree that's eternal. Ashwata means not eternal, right? So the uneternal, eternal tree. The very word is not eternal. And it's very interesting. The banyan tree. I saw the largest banyan tree in the world was Gita 26 years ago in Calcutta. What's that? Where all the plants are? Where you took me? The Botanical Garden. Yes, right. It's one of the oldest trees. It's mentioned in Chinese literature. This tree, right? But it's gone, right? Because a banyan tree has this huge thing, and then it sends out other roots, right? And then the original tree burnt down years ago, maybe in a fire. But the other trees are still growing. So it seems to be eternal tree, although a tree is not eternal; it's going to die, right? But it seems to go on, right? That's another quality of the Maya of the world itself. It seems to be it's not eternal, it's not real, it's not lasting, yet it's eternal. It's always here, right? The material world never disappears, right? And no one says that. It says exactly. We think of God's a creator. There's no creation. There's never a time that things didn't exist. The world always existed. The world never stopped existing. Yet nothing exists. Nothing lasts, right? For 1 second, nothing here lasts even 1 second. Yet it's always not lasting for 1 second, right? The world doesn't cease to exist. There's another aspect, another way of thinking of the Nitya Lila also, is that even though the world itself is only, it's coming from that. It's only a manifestation of that. It's a Lila of the Nitya. But then this idea of God is playing, right? And then we are also part of his play, right? We're chess pieces, but we're also playing consciously, right? We're conscious chess pieces, right? Because he didn't create just inanimate objects; he created animate objects, moving and unmoving. Achala, chala, right? The term in Sanskrit, right? Moving and unmoving beings. So we're not just statues or little clay figures. We are clay figures, but we seem to be acting, right? So we can also take part in the play. So this becomes more interesting. So these are topics beyond the discussion, but hinting a little bit. So Swami Krishna used another term, the Nitya Radha, where the play becomes conscious, right? Where the players also become part of the play, right? It's an interesting. So you can see even like in a, I guess like in a good production, there's also places for improv, right? You become one of the players, and maybe that's why there exists a play in the first place, right? Maybe God wants it to be this way. He created the world so that so He can enjoy all the parts and play all the parts. So, anyways. Okay, read faster. The next type of love is what is known as Vatsalya. Vatsalya Bhava. Loving God not as our father, but as our child. This may seem peculiar, but it is a discipline to enable us to detach all ideas of power from the concept of God. Real love knows no fear, right? So there can be no fear, right? All ideas of power and might and majesty, the Aishwarya, the majesty and glory of God. You know, we think God, oh God, gosh, you're huge. It's designed, this bhava, we developed the bhava to destroy this mistake, right? It stops higher forms of love. The idea of power brings with it awe and reverence. There should be no awe in love. The ideas of reverence and obedience are necessary for the formation of character. But when character is formed, when the lover has tasted the calm, peaceful love, and tasted also the little of love's intense madness, then he need not talk more of ethics and discipline. The lover says he does not care to conceive of God as mighty, majestic, and glorious, as the Lord of the universe, or as the God of gods. It is to avoid this association with God as fear-creating sense of power that he worships God as his own child. The mother and the father are not moved by awe in relation to the child. They cannot have any reverence for the child. They cannot think of asking any favor of the child. The child's position is always that of the receiver, and out of love for him, the parents will give up their bodies 100 times over. 1,000 lives they will sacrifice for that one child of theirs, and therefore God is loved as a child. Interesting. Not only is the idea of power removed, but a child, if we think we want to give, our love has to only go to God, right? A child is only a receiver. That's the thing. He needs everything. I mean, not just a child. I mean, this is real. I mean, like today we had a little infant, the 2 months old. The first outing, they bring it to the temple. It's like if we put it there, it stays there. If we move it, it moves. If it could only do the parents and 100% of the attention of the parents, doting parents, doting parent, dotting pattern of the word, right? Constantly focus. There's a line in that book, Ramakrishna and Christ. I forget the name of the German author. He says that God is friend, He's creator, He's mother, He's father, He's like that. He says, and big baby all in one. This is God's the big baby. I like this line, right? And then he uses the thing is like we usually think we're kneeling in front of God, right? We think kneeling in front of God, but at this level we're kneeling over God, right? Like kneeling over a child. Very different mood, right? And it's so sweet. There's a form of puja called Seva Puja, and especially developed by the Vallabha Sampradaya. This is one of the important Vaishnava Sampradayas. They highly developed this Vatsalya Bhav. Also, it's said actually Vatsalya Bhav sadhanas came primarily from this sect of Vaishnavism, that of worshipping Lala Gopal, Bala Gopal, the baby Krishna, or baby Ram. It can be extended to baby Ram, even baby Ganesha, and we have the infant Jesus and nativity. We can see it can be extended, right? But the baby Krishna, and I think about it because we have a beautiful Lalaji, a small child. One example, one time when I'll tell a story from Berkeley. What's that lady who went to her house? She's a great very strong. She's a Vaishnav lady. I forget her name right now, but she's like Shakti. There's certain, these are like a leader in the Hindu community. She's a very powerful, like that. And we went to her house for bhajans. We had a bhajan program, and in their living room they had a nice picture of Radha Krishna and the gopis, and they offered some food. We sang bhajans for a couple hours, and then she was going to feed us all as guests. And he said, I heard that she worships baby Krishna. It's her specialty. And I said, can we see baby Krishna? I want to see Lalaji. He goes, oh no, Swami, not possible. I said, it's 9 o'clock. Little boy. He went to sleep at 6:30. Right? It's not possible. How can you? He's a little boy. Right? It's like we are adults. We can sit up singing his glories. But he has to go, because he has to wake up early also. He has school in the morning. He has to, right? And a few months ago we had that Swami Shivatmanandaji from Chinmay Mission here. Very beautiful talk. Where he tells the story about his grandmother, who also baby Krishna. Also, and every morning she'd wake him up and bathe him and everything, and then she'd give him his lessons, his school lessons. And every day she'd read Bhagavad Gita to him, right? Because when he grows up, right, he's going to be asked some really hard questions, right? And he's going to have to know his answers. Her job, education is required. The idea of teaching God Bhagavad Gita, Krishna Bhagavad Gita, it seems absurd, and it is absurd, but it's not. It's actually more true, right? Because how is he going to learn? He has to know. Eventually he's going to. Not every kid grows. Of course, he stays young forever, but that's the trick. I bet you, if we visit now, that Mataji's in Berkeley's Krishna is still going to sleep at 6:30. He hasn't grown up at all, right? We've here somebody brought. I've told this thing because whenever I think about it, I tell the same group of stories because to me these are very endearing stories. Somebody came, one very Gujarati lady came. And she handmade a green dress for Gopal. Right? It was lots of sequins, the typical ones that they have like that. But it was twice as big. It was for maybe her Gopal is bigger than our Gopal. So I made it for Gopal. So I immediately wanted to satisfy because she made it by hand. So usually people we put it on a tray, put it there, we put it in the closet, and on a puja day we bring it out, that type of thing. So I'll put it on him right now. So satisfy. And, he's this big and the cloth is this big, so it just kind of draped over him. And I said, Mataji, it's too big. And without moving, I'm sure without thinking, she says, he'll grow into it. Right? He's a little boy. Just not thinking, just like we think of we're supposed to buy things a little big for them. Now, it seems absurd. This is the most stupid, crazy, I don't know what religion you're teaching here. But this is the sweet, it's actually, think about it, this is the intensity of love is so much greater than, oh God, you're huge. Or God, don't burn me. Or God save me, even God save me. Right? Or God love me. It's not God love me, because you have so much love. Whether the kid loves you or not, who knows? We'll see when he's 18 what he does. Whether we still love him when he's 18, we'll see what he does. But at that age, God is completely lovable, completely dependent. Right? If you don't bathe him, he doesn't bathe. If you don't feed him, he doesn't eat. You don't hear him, Ma. Please, we're struggling with work. Right? Please give me a good job so I can feed my children. Right? You don't pray that to your child. Right, you figure somehow or another I gotta get enough money to feed the child. Right, very it's actually, I don't remember. There's one Vaishnava sadhu, Varshana Maharaj, is one in the Varshana Maharaj. He said actually that because the idea of God being our mother or God being our father, which is prevalent in Western tradition as well as in Hindu tradition, like we're Shakti, God is our mother, the mother goddess, right? Or the Heavenly Father, the Father. He says these interesting are not mentioned in the Pancha Bhavas, right? They're not considered. Even that of being a child is not considered. It's the truth. We come from mother. We come from her, and we exist in her, and we will return to her. This is the truth, and that's an ontological truth. But but the ideal of love of giving is not there. That of taking is still there, right? But he says actually the idea of God as Father, God as Mother, is actually just a reflection, like a tree being reflected in water. It looks the opposite, right? Reflection in the material world of this bhava. This is the real bhava. God's not our mother. We're God's mother, right? Reflected, we think, oh, God's our mother. right? It's like, and so this is an interesting idea. This is a reflection, not perverted. Perverted meaning not judgmentally, but a reflection of the original bhava of Vatsalya. But just like if God's the real, the universal, and so Sri Ramakrishna also said that if you have a child, right, if you see your child also as God, right, then immediately you're serving God in that same. It's immediately applicable. If you think every mother thinks their child is like God, and put that, but actually think it's actually God, right, and God has become even your human child, right, then immediately your love, it becomes Vatsalya bhav. Right, you can jump over 1,000 lives of sadhana. Just this one idea of seeing a child while he's there. Immediately you get to that high point by this understanding. Okay. The next Vatsalya bhav. The child, and therefore God is loved as a child. This idea of loving God as a child comes into existence and grows naturally among those religious sects which believe in the incarnation of God. For the Mohammedans, it is impossible to have the idea of God as a child. They would shrink from it in a kind of horror. But the Christians and the Hindus can realize it easily because they have the baby Jesus and the baby Krishna. The women in India often look upon themselves as Krishna's mother. Christian mothers also may take up the idea that they are Christ's mother, and it will bring to the West the knowledge of God's divine motherhood, which they so much need. Interesting that Christian mothers can also bring this. Right? We know that God is a child in Christianity, but we don't think of ourselves as Mary. Right? But if we develop the same idea that we know Krishna's mother is Yashoda or Devaki, he has two main mothers, right? But if we think we can become Krishna's mother, so we can also become Jesus' mother, and that will introduce the reflection of that, which is that of motherhood, that God is mother. Interesting, reflection of that thing. The superstitions of awe and reverence in relation to God are deeply rooted in our heart of hearts, and it takes long years to shrink entirely in love, to sink entirely in love our ideals of reverence and veneration. Let me read that. I didn't read that properly. The superstitions of awe and reverence in relation to God are deeply rooted in our hearts of hearts, and it takes long years to sink entirely in love our ideas of reverence and veneration, of awe and majesty and glory with regard to God. The superstition, that is the idea that God is great and we're small, and we have to obey and we have to worship and we have to serve, right? Or we'll be punished or hopefully be rewarded. This idea is that this is super. We think, this is worshiping baby Krishna as if he depends on you. That's superstition. This is superstition, and it takes a long time to be so immersed, to take those ideas and drown them, right? Drown them in love. I think we probably should stop there because the next one requires some more commentary. So we've gotten 4 bhavas: Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, the friend. So we forgot. So Dasya, who's a friend of God? Who has this relationship? Arjuna is a classic example, right? Vidura, these also in Sudama, in Krishna Lila, right? And Vatsalya. Vatsalya, of course, a classic example is Mother Yashoda, like this, right? Mother Yashoda, Devaki and Yashoda were both, Devaki and Vasudeva and Yashoda and Nanda. These two couples were great yogis in past lives. They did thousands of years of tapasya to get a boon, to be the parents of Krishna. But they have slightly different boons, and slightly different boons were given to them. Devaki and Vasudeva, they had boons like Vishnu be born as their son, right? And they could be part of the Leela, and he was, right? And so they saw him, but as soon as they saw him, how did he appear? Mahavishnu, 4 arms, holding mace, club, and disc, right? And it was a crown. That's so it said, right? And then he became a little child, right? So they saw both. They saw that he was the omnipresent God, all powerful, created Vishnu, the one who holds up the universe, right? Who incarnates to save mankind from suffering, right? To destroy to destroy the wicked, to save the righteous. These are the powers of Vishnu, right? They knew that, and then then Vishnu, Krishna gave a blessing that you'll have to take me to Golok, right? And put me in the bed in the lap of Yashoda. There's a whole story. We all know that story, but you will think of me all the time. Love me and think of me while I'm gone, right? Think of me both as your child and as God, right? Know that I'm God, but know that God was born as your child. I think that's incredible. Just that idea. He's infinite God, and he was born in my body, as my child. It's overwhelming, right? But Yashoda, forgive me. We know the names of the rishis. I wasn't prepared for this. I don't remember the name of the rishis. Yashoda and Nanda were also great yogis, standing on one foot for thousands of years. They got Vishnu, and they also prayed, "Be born as my child. Be born in my house. Let me raise you." It's like, but I asked a special boon that I never know your God. This is his special blessing, right? They had a higher love in a certain sense. Krishna was with Devaki a few minutes, but all the time in her mind is the awesome power of this miracle of the infinite God taking flesh, became man and dwelt among us. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Incredible, right? Philosophically, theologically, emotionally, it's overwhelming. But Yashoda asked, "May I not know your God?" And you see many times, she sees when we know the story, take that mud out of your, like a mother's job to keep mud out of the baby's mouth, right? Don't eat that. Pull the mud out and sees the universe. Not just the universe, he sees infinite universes. And within those infinite universes, he sees the earth. And on that earth, he sees Yashoda taking mud out of opening in Krishna's mouth. And within that mouth, he's another universe. It's pretty trippy, very cosmic, right? Right. And then and what happens? Immediately she sees that, and immediately she's back to and stop eating dirt. Right? Immediately it's clouded again. That's his blessing, his yogamaya. She covered his mind. Not because she was ignorant and couldn't hold the vision. Right? Arjuna, it says that he couldn't hold the vision. Right? That Yashoda could hold the vision. Who knows what vision she had. She wanted, this is a better vision. Right? And so you think about Yashoda, we know in the story we're told, we know Krishna to Bhagavan, we know he's God. And therefore we have that God, we know these stories like this. But Yashoda, she didn't know the God, and all the things that Krishna did were just things that kids do. He got into trouble. There was a near accident. The cart fell over. A bull. There was a problem with an animal. There's all these a giant witch. I don't know. Not everything's bad. Trees. I mean, there's these normal accidents, different diseases. We discussed in our talks in the Bhagavatam. We described like what Putin represents, what this represents. And they're just regular childhood things. Right, so and actually, our child. I mean, when I was a child, I went through those things. We all went, and our children go through those things, right? And so, if we understand that, that's the highest love, right? Very interesting, right? And also, God's playing all the parts. So even when your child's going through it, and we went through it, that was God going through this Leela also. Is Krishna? It's special. We know he's directly God in a different way than we're directly God. We're also directly God, but not in the same. Not as direct, right? We have right. One of the things he knows and we don't know. That's one of the problems. Anyway, so next week we'll finish this Bhakti Yoga, the last section on the final bhava called Madhurya Bhava, the sweet bhava, and then his conclusions. It's only a page, but quite a page. Has a punch. So thank you for your kind attention. We're only 3 minutes over, or actually 33 minutes over, but 3 minutes over. Hari Om Tat Sat.